UFC Octagon lands in Chicago, Illinois this weekend as the United Center plays host to UFC 319. In the featherweight co-main event, Manchester's own Lerone Murphy looks to defend his place at the top of the division when he welcomes the heavy-handed Aaron Pico. And in the main event, Khamzat Chimaev gets his first shot at UFC Gold when he faces reigning middleweight champion Dricus Du Plessis for the belt. UFC 319 goes down live this Saturday on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus. The prelims kick off at 1 a.m. with the main card from 3. Welcome to Fight Week and your official preview of UFC 319. I'm Adam Catterall. It is a pleasure to be in your company. Yes, the tan is good because it is holiday season. And that kind of is the theme of today's show, because let me introduce today's guests. As always, Nick Peet is here, but he's not here. Oh, no. He's out at a Magnum PI convention, getting extremely excited about holiday season. Look at that shirt. That is a rascal, big boy.
That's a family resort shirt if ever you've seen one, that, isn't it? Eh? Fantastic. I'll tell you what, though, where's my tan? I've been here a few days. It ought to be a bit darker than this by now. I'm struggling because my colour balance and your bright red head aren't really working together.
Listen, the mahogany is kicking in, my friend. This is how we're going to be looking for the summer. Do me a favour for the rest of that holiday. Just get rid of the beard and go with the tash. Let's go full sell it. Let's get it on. It's a belter, is that. Now, Mr. Michael Bisping is away on his holidays and therefore can't join us for today's show. So we thought we'd get in. The next level of pundit. When I say the next level of pundit, this is a man that has just recently called time on his competitive career. He's obviously helping out a lot of young fighters coming out of South Wales. And he's doing a little bit himself. I think he's coming for our gig. I'll be honest with you, Nicholas. I've seen him on his podcast. Yeah, calls in all cause of aggravation out there. It is the one, the only, Mr. Jack Shaw. Where's the shirt, Jack? Come on, man. Did you not get the memo? I brought the tan. He's brought the Magnum PI. Where's the gear?
It's very hard to rep a flowery shirt when you're sat in a box room in rainy Wales. So I must have missed that one. But pleasure to be on. Big shoes to fill for Mr. Bisping. But very much looking forward to it, guys.
Now you've got it nailed down, my man. Listen, before we get stuck into obviously previewing UFC 319, let's talk about you. Obviously, just recently called time on that competitive career, but now adding the knowledge and working with the next generation. How are you finding it? How are you finding the coaching element of the game?
Enjoyable, but very stressful as well. I can now sympathise with my dad as to why he was always so worked up over there. He was just telling me he needs to relax and chill out. But now having to deal with 20 students, if you want to call it myself, I can see why he loses his rag from time to time. But very enjoyable process to pass the knowledge on and obviously try and guide some of these younger guys in my footsteps.
Who's the biggest nightmare in the gym? It's got to be Open, Elliott. Surely Open's a nightmare.
What a daft question. You know it's him. You know full well it's him.
I won't say too much because you'll show off for me, but you're not a million miles off with your prediction.
I wouldn't be surprised if Orban actually rascals some of them shirts that Nick Peet's got on. It seems to be his type of thing.
I bottled it off the main man, yeah, it is.
He's definitely more tanned than you two, put it that way. He's the most tanned man in Wales, and the tan's only getting darker.
Yeah, but mate, is his all electric beach? Anyway, we'll leave it at that. We'll move on to this fantastic card this weekend because it is Chicago. That's the destination for UFC 319. We've got a fantastic main event. Dricus Du Plessis taking on Khamzat Chimaev. The middleweight championship of the world is on the line. Stylistically, I mean, this is mouthwatering, Jack. You've got a guy that has incredible cardio, can go to the deep waters, and then you've got a sprinter in the other side. Can he go to these deep waters? I suppose that's the big question that is over the head of Khamzat Chimaev as we head on into this fight.
Yeah, for me, it's very much like you said, a double-ended sword. You've got the champion, DDP, who's tried and tested, been in there with the best, has proven that he can do 5 rounds, and has also proven that he gets more dangerous as the fight goes on. Then you flip the coin to the other side, you've got Khamzat Chimaev, who for me is arguably the most dominant grappler wrestler in the UFC at the minute, maybe even of all time, and arguably the most dangerous one-round fighter we've ever seen as well. But the big question obviously lies, what happens if we get past that first and second round and he is forced into deep waters round 3, 4 and 5 against a guy who's been there multiple times before?
What I love about this, Nick, And I mean this in the kindest, nicest way, because I've met both of these guys and I think they've both got great personalities and I think they're really nice fellas. But they play the role of the villain really, really well. Which one plays it better for you?
Well, Khamzat, for me, is the ultimate Bond villain. He is just waiting to be cast alongside Daniel Craig, isn't he? He's got the look and he fights like one and carries himself like one, mixes in the company of one and everything. He's literally a Bond villain in waiting. But DDP just loves the game. These are two guys who are absolutely dyed-in-the-wool prize fighters. They understand the game. They understand what it's all about, the work you need to do behind closed doors, leave no stone unturned, all those cliches. But then also when the cameras start rolling, when it's media time, when a lot of fighters start getting frustrated and angry and bored and they don't like doing media, these two guys come alive in very different ways as well. DDP knows how to pick holes in his opponents. He knows how to get inside the mind of his opponents and manipulate the media to set narratives of his own before the fight's even started. Whereas Khamzat rolls so deep, he's so intimidating. And listen, we've been at many Khamzat fights over the course of his UFC career. Doesn't matter whether he's in the main event or first on the prelims, it's the Khamzat show. The entire hotel becomes the Khamzat show. And that's why I'm so intrigued by this fight. Two absolutely massive stars.
Let's pick them both apart then, shall we? From a Driccus point of view, Jack, why doesn't he get the love? It seems that he doesn't get the love that maybe he deserves. If we look at the resume, the last 4 fights have all been elite level guys. He's been superb in every single one of those fights. Why is he not getting the credit that he deserves?
I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that he's not your traditional look-at fighter. You know, his striking doesn't look clean. His wrestling and grappling is very scrappy, very messy, but ultimately it works. And I think you go back and look at his last 3 victories, the 2 Strickland fights, the Stylebender fight, people kind of have to put respect on his name now, because to beat Sean Strickland the way he did in our second fight in a complete shutout against a guy who on paper, considering it was a striking match, should have really outpointed him and didn't. And then you go into the Stylebender fight and, all right, it was a submission win, but ultimately the submission came from rocking him and putting him down. You know, it's very hard to look up past him. And he made a real good point this week, DDP, in an interview I watched, and I think what he said was spot on. It was the awkwardness is on purpose, because you physically can't train for me. You can't bring in guys that are going to mimic my style. You know, you can't bring in a boxer. You can't bring in a traditional boxer and say, can you copy this guy? You can't bring in a traditional grappler and say, can you copy this style? And ultimately, if we look at his resume, it's been very, very successful and very, very bulletproof for him.
And if we go even one fight further back, Nick, the display that he put together against Robert Whittaker at that time,
yeah.
No, I don't think anybody really expected the way that he went about that and the way that he delivered it.
Yeah, but even before then, Darren Till, Derek Brunson, you know, those fights that he goes into and people are like, oh, he's got no gas tank, oh, he's scruffy, he's got a style that isn't going to work. And every time he comes through victorious. The guy's a born winner. Look at his resume. You know, this guy enters jiu-jitsu tournaments and taps out an entire Gracie Barhart team, one after the other. The rest of his teammates are just sitting on the side of the mat with nothing to do. Like, that's the level he's at across all fight sports. He's ticked every single box. And yes, he is unconventional, but that kind of makes him even more appealing, because you don't know what you're going to get next. Against Till, there was moments he looked finished. Against Brunson, he got caught heavy. Whittaker was absolutely phenomenal, but in every fight, you see moments where you think, oh, this is the moment when Driccus is going to lose. He looks like he's not in the right place. He looks like his gas tank's burned out. He's zigged instead of zagging. But what does he do? He comes through it. He rides through the moments, and he's a serial winner. I think he's a phenomenal fighter, and I think he should be in everyone's top 5 pound for pound list.
Okay, then, with that in mind, Khamzat Chimaev. Jack, do you have any doubts over him? Because he's been sensational.
You know, in terms of skill and ability, zero doubts whatsoever. I think he's every bit of what he's advertised as. He is the MMA's Ivan Drago, arguably the most feared guy in the division, and maybe even in the sport. You know, there's talk of him going down to win the belt. There's talk of him going up to win the belt. And you listen to the guy speak, you can see he's not just saying this to get clicks. He genuinely believes it, and you know, he's got me believing it as well. That's how good he is. The only real doubt is the only time we have seen him falter is when he's been dragged into those third rounds against Gilbert Burns, when he was dragged into the third round against Kamaru Usman, and those are 3-round fights. So as a fighter, I know doesn't matter how tired you are in the third round, you know in 5 minutes it's going to be over. But when you feel like that and you've got another 10 minutes to keep fighting for, then it's a very different animal and a very different mindset altogether. Now, no doubt he's prepared for that. You know, he knows Driccus is not likely going to go away early like the rest of the guys, but until you've actually done it, it doesn't matter how many times it's been done in the gym, until you've got that live experience under the lights of going into round 4 and 5, you know, you don't really know how you're going to react and you don't really know how you're going to cope. So for me, that's the only real chink in the armour then is that cardio, and can he cope later on in the fight?
He has, Nick, made some fundamental changes outside of the octagon, though, hasn't he? I mean, we've been around him quite a bit during his career, and we know that he was cutting corners. He likes a chocolate bar every now and again, and maybe he checks his eye for the ball, we all that. But in the build-up to the Whittaker fight, there was a very different demeanour about him, and that was evident in the performance. We know that he went back off to his old wrestling coach from when he was a young kid. He kind of distanced himself from old teams and old people, and he's gone back to his traditions. And now that he's been doing a little bit over in America as well, I think he's been in Florida this time around, it seems like the pennies dropped with him. It seems like he's actually taking full advantage of his talent and now applying the strength and conditioning and all those types of things in order to then perform. Hopefully, we get to see that on Saturday night.
Yeah, and we've also got to bear in mind that, you know, this guy, probably more than any other fighter in the UFC, was seriously impacted by COVID-19. He got a serious dose of it, ended up in hospital. There was a time there where he called time in his career. Said, I'll never be able to compete again. And it's taken his body. The body's an incredible thing, and given the right nutrients and the right time, it can pretty much recover from anything. And I think with every year, we're seeing a stronger version of Khamzat. And I also think that's why we're only seeing him once a year, because he himself knows he can't afford to rush into camps back to back to back. He is still in somewhat recovery mode. His lungs were badly damaged. So I just think that the longer he goes on, the better he's going to look. Yes, he did get quite lucky against Kamaru Usman. I think he was lucky not to certainly draw that fight. The first round was probably a 10-8 Khamzat, like pretty much every round. Jack's right. Other than Tom Aspinall, name me a more dangerous one-round fighter in the UFC. There isn't one. But against Robert Whittaker, and the other side of that, against Kevin Holland, he looked absolutely phenomenal in that first round. So the other question is, what if he gets to the end of round 3 and he's as strong as he was in 1? What does Driccus do then?
That's a frightening thought. Here's one for you then. We're out there looking for superstars now in the UFC, the next generation of superstar. Could the winner of this, Jack, become the face of the UFC?
I think very much so if it is Khamzat Chimaev, because we are looking at a guy who could potentially be the first, in my opinion, freeweight UFC champion. I don't know how hard of a cut he would have to drop down to 170, but the fact that he's in the public eye talking about, I'm going to drop down and beat Jack Della, and then I'm going to go up and beat Ankalaev, you know, how you don't get excited for that as a fan is absolutely crazy. And we already know he's one of the mega stars of the sport, especially in the Middle East area. He's very much on the level of Islam and Khabib and those guys in terms of popularity. And if he goes in there Saturday and absolutely whitewashes Driccus and submits him in a round, then his star power is going to triple. Yeah,
I kind of agree, but I also think that Driccus unlocks an entire continent. I think he's already a superstar in Africa, obviously the first African born and raised and based UFC champion. There's real significance in that. He is putting the UFC under a lot of pressure to finally take the octagon to South Africa, which they were very close to doing a couple of years ago. I think we're at that point in time now where he's got to get there, and they're going to use Khamzat Chimaev's global popularity and, as Jack says, his Middle Eastern and Russian popularity especially as a springboard. Whichever way this works out, like this is a cracking main event, because you can see a clear outcome both ways, where Sunday morning you go, well, I knew that was going to happen, because there's a clear view to victory for both men. But what does happen is the UFC wins, because whoever lifts that belt goes to the next level in terms of stardom and arguably becomes a global pay-per-view star.
There you go. That's what the boys think of the main event at UFC 319. You can get Tom Aspinall's opinion by tuning into Tom Aspinall's Fight Lab on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus. That will be available on the YouTube channel for you tomorrow. So make sure you go and check that out as he breaks down Dricus Du Plessis versus Khamzat Chimaev. Now, we've got a bit of British interest in the co-main event. He stuck his hand up last minute. Lerone Murphy, featherweights on deck as he welcomes Aaron Pico to the UFC. Cracking fight for the UK fight fans, and this might be the one that determines the next for Mr. Volkanovski, especially if Movzar is out injured, Jack.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, Lerone Murphy truly is a world-class fighter. He's got everything you look for in an elite level guy. World-class skill set, a world-class coaching team, and also been in there with world-class opposition as well. You look at some of his wins, Dan Ige, Barboza, coming off that massive win and dominant against Josh Emmett. Not the most outspoken guy, just goes about his business, gets his work done, and the results truly speak for themselves. And a bit of a different type of opposition he's against you in Aaron Pico. Not necessarily a guy who he probably would have expected to fight next, but yet again, on paper, another world-class fighter. In terms of accolades, Pico's got it all. Junior wrestling world gold medalist, Golden Glove boxing champion, can literally stop the fight at any moment, whether that's on the feet or on the ground. And having watched some of his footage recently, I think he's looked very, very improved since he's joined the Jackson Wink team as well out in Albuquerque. Pretty much inheriting John Jones's coaching staff, Greg Jackson, Brandon Gibson. Real interesting matchup here, and a case of, does Pico's level and hype live up to the level of the UFC?
It also shows where Lerone's head's at as well, doesn't it, Nick? Because this was Movzar Evloev's fight. He pulled out, and on 3 weeks' notice, Lerone, as Jack's just kind of pointed out there, he's had to earn everything so far. He's not being handed anything. He's on a fantastic win streak right now, but he's prepared on 3 weeks' notice to risk all that against the new boy, stick his hand up, in hopefully to be able to progress himself towards that title shot.
Yeah, and as Jack's just pointed out, he's not the most vocal guy, Lerone, even though he's probably got one of the most fascinating backstories in the entire sport's history. He's not a guy that's going to, stand on a soapbox and start calling for main events. It's just not the way he's made. You see a lot of lads from inner cities like Manchester and Liverpool and Cardiff who they're not that way, because if you're that way, you get a smack in the streets kind of thing. So people are a lot more reserved and kind of more willing to earn it. But I think Lerone's realised, well, I'm 16-0. There's not many other people knocking about in the UFC with my kind of unbeaten record, and yet I'm still not quite there. I'm not quite at a title shot. So what can he do? Well, what he can do is put his hands up when a fight drops off in his weight division, featuring Movzar Evloev, who is, most people think, the next guy in line. Well, Movzar out. Okay, well, I'll take Movzar's spot, put myself right back in the firing line on a huge event in Chicago against a fighter with a massive reputation. Like, most people may not know, UFC fans may not know who Aaron Pico is, but as Jack's just pointed out, this guy is incredibly talented, as well as being Golden Gloves wrestling all-star. He was also a Pancration champion. Pancration's the ancient original hand-to-hand combat sport from the Olympic Games. They kind of brought that back. He was a champion that as well. When this guy first come to MMA, believe me, the UFC wanted him, but he ended up going to another organisation, got paid a fortune, but he ended up with like a Nike shoe deal. Like, it was a big deal in America. Aaron Pico was seen as the future of mixed martial arts, and yet he's 17 fights into his record with 4 defeats on there as well, where Lerone, at arguably the bigger show, is unbeaten in 16. But listen, these are both two phenomenal fighters. Yes, Pico's hit some roadblocks, but right now he's in arguably the best form of his career. I think he's won 9 of his last 10. And Lerone's going to face some real adversity this week. But as Jack pointed out, Lerone Murphy is one of the best featherweights in the world. He can handle it.
Jack, you just said that you've seen developments in Pico's game. Nick's just pointed out the roadblocks. What have you seen recently where he has levelled up?
I think a lot of it is experience. I think, as Nick said, because he was such a big star and he was such a big deal when he decided to try his hand at MMA, I think his previous promotion kind of rushed him a little bit. So we did see him pick up a couple of losses early doors where he was just boxing or he was just wrestling and he wasn't necessarily mixing everything together. Since joining the Jackson Wink team, I think we've really seen him start to put that together. You don't know if he's going to strike, if he's going to shoot a takedown. When he's getting the takedown, he's aggressive and utilising his ground and pound rather than just going, as we call it, wrestle mode and just looking to control the guy. So for me, he's a lot more of an all-round fighter now. I know he's had a few losses along the way, but the guy's still young. He's only just really reaching his physical peak, and that's a scary thought when you go back and look at his highlight reel and see how dangerous he has been from such early doors in his career.
I know that obviously I'm going to get carried away because I'm a UK fight fan, but if you look at where the champ is at, Mr. Volkanovski, he's beaten the number 2, he's beaten the number 3, he's beaten the number 4. Currently, Lerone sits at number 6. And as you pointed out a moment or two ago, Nick, he's stepping in for Movzar here. So if Movzar is out for any period of time and he looks really, really good at the weekend against Aaron Pico, and vice versa from a Pico point of view, you could make an argument that this is an eliminator for the title.
100%. And that's how Lerone's got to approach the fight. And he's got nothing to fear here whatsoever. Aaron Pico is very talented, but Aaron Pico has not competed on the biggest stage in this sport. And yet, they've both got 17 fights, and Lerone's the one that's still undefeated. So he's faced better competition, whichever way you look at it. So Lerone's just got to go out there and do Lerone. The great thing is now, he's got plenty of experience. He's headlined a couple of times at the Apex in Las Vegas. He understands the show. He understands the UFC staff. He's on first name terms. To him, this is a home show. The difference with Pico compared to other fighters that came over from Bellator, your likes of Michael Chandler and Pitbull, is that they were at the very back end of their careers. Aaron Pico hasn't really defined his legacy yet. He's still only 28 years of age, a relatively young man. He's coming to the UFC at his peak. For him to lose now means that, well, his next fight won't be a ranked guy at all. It'll be somebody outside the rankings. So for him, the opportunity to jump in to the top 5 or 6 with one performance is absolutely crazy. But obviously, he gets that because of his reputation. I think honestly, it's a phenomenal fight. If you don't know who Pico is, get ready. This guy can fight.
Looking forward to it. That's your co-main event. Welterweights are on deck. Also on this main card, Geoff Neal and Carlos Prates are going to be going at it. Shall we just send them a bonus now, Jack? Because both of these guys just like to have a fight, don't they? So we're going to get some craziness, aren't we?
Yeah, if you're a fan of striking and stand up and watching people get knocked out, this is very much the one you don't want to miss. You've got two guys very heavy-handed, very different styles. Geoff Neal's more boxing style, a little bit more flat-footed. You've got Prates, who's just got that elite level Muay Thai background, and both can ultimately put the other out with one shot. I think that's the beauty of a matching a fight like this. Sean Shelby knew what he was doing when he matched these two up, because it can literally be swinging in the favour of one guy and bang, one shot could literally change the entire fight. But I'm very excited for it. Both guys are going to be very keen to get in there and impress. We've got Geoff Neal coming off a win over RDA, but wouldn't have been the way he wanted to win the fight with it being an injury. And then you've got Prates coming off his first UFC loss to Ian Gary, and what was a good fight, but ultimately one he would have liked to win. So I think very much they're going to meet in the middle, and we're in for a barn burner, I think, with this one.
Well, this was the original one, wasn't it, Nick? This was the original fight that was made. It was Neal that fell off, and then Ian Gary went, yeah, go on, then I'll take it on, whatever it was, a week's notice or whatever. So this was originally scheduled the first time around. So it's going to be interesting to see how Prates approaches this, coming off the back of that loss. I know he's had losses earlier on in his career, but that was the first real bump that he's experienced in the UFC, and kind of the first bump that gym had experienced as well, because they'd all been flying.
The fighting nerds have been flying, yeah. But you're right, he was on an 11-fight win run coming into that, including 4 inside the UFC, which were all finishes and all bonuses as well. Prates just looked absolutely untouchable. But Jack's right, he was preparing to face Geoff Neal. Geoff Neal dropped off, and then Ian Gary, of all people, steps in, completely different type of striker, very patient, very astute, great on the back foot, whereas Geoff likes to plough forward. So Prates shouldn't look too much into that defeat to Ian Gary. Obviously, flip it round. Geoff Neal's lost to Ian Gary, actually a split decision. Geoff had real success in that fight, so MMA maths might point you towards, well, Geoff Neal's had a better go against Ian Gary, but he had a full camp for Ian Gary. So listen, I think both these guys are, fringe top 10, aren't they? What are they, 11 and 12 in this welterweight division? That feels about right. A shot in the top 10 for the winner. Neal's nice and aggressive with his hands. He had a couple of sticky moments early in his career, but again, I think he had a septic shock syndrome or something. He had a real bad infection, and he had a couple of bad years, but he's absolutely back again now. The only losses are against Shavkat and Ian Gary recently. No shame in that whatsoever, two of the top contenders in the division. And Prates, the fighting nerd himself, looking to bounce back in style. You're right, this is a bonus check win and fight, whichever way you look at it. Either both of them or one of them is getting paid.
There you go. Send them the bonuses now. Set for an absolute cracking fight. Next up, we've got Jared Cannonier taking on Michael Venom Page. And this guy's getting greedy, Jack. Like you, mate. You were fleeting between the weight divisions when you were in the UFC. This guy's doing the same thing. He could end up getting ranked in 2 by Tuesday morning. This one up at middleweight, and he's looked really good at 185.
He looked phenomenal in his last fight, against a real dangerous guy in Shara Bullet. Stylistically, a good fight for him in terms of a guy who will come to strike, but ultimately beat him at his own game. Just totally frustrated him, totally outclassed him, and just a smooth, no damage, easy path to victory for him in the last one. It was, in terms of, as nights at the office go, that's what you want. Get in and out, no damage, don't take many shots, and come home with your win check as well.
I think he's being greedy, Nick. I'm going to be honest with you, mate. He's currently ranked 15 with the welterweights, and if he comes through this, I mean, Jared's number 8 in the middleweight division. If he gets a victory here at the weekend, he could be ranked in 2 divisions come Tuesday.
That's Michael Venom Page all over, isn't it? You know, he comes for everything. You've spent enough time with him. He's like fight sports renaissance man. Boxing, kickboxing, bare knuckle, MMA. I can do it all, mate, and I'll probably kick your ass doing whatever discipline you want. That's Michael Venom Page. So it doesn't make no surprise to me whatsoever that he's decided to stay at middleweight. And I think Jared Cannonier, even though he's a former contender, he's been right up there. I think at this moment in time, to bring Cannonier back down to 3 rounds. He's coming off the back of 8 consecutive 5-round fights. 5-round scheduled fights, should I say. But they're big main events. A lot of them at the apex, a lot of focus on him. Now he's coming down to a sprint, and he's facing an artist in Michael Venom Page, who over 15 minutes can make anybody look ridiculous. I think this is a wonderful fight for MVP.
He looked good though, didn't he, Cannonier, last time out against RoboCop? I know that he's, 41 years of age now, and he's been at heavyweight, he's been at light heavyweight, he's now down at middleweight, which is remarkable, absolutely remarkable. But we have met him a couple of times. He lives a very clean life. He takes his nutrition, his strength and conditioning, all those types of things seriously. He lives the life, is what I'm referring to. So he's not a normal 41-year-old Jack. But last time out against Gregory Rodriguez, he looked really good. He
did, and very much a fight that we're used to seeing him in. Back and forth, and then ultimately he lands the killer gorilla final blow and puts him away. But like you said, he's been knocking around at the top end of this division for a long, long time. But a good point is that he's very used to that 5-round fight. And how you approach a 5-round fight to a 3-round fight is so different. You have time to warm into the fight. You have time to almost download your data and get your reads. But a 3-round fight is a totally different story. And then you factor in then that he's in against one of the most awkward and trickiest strikers in the game, an MVP, a guy who, as Nick said, is made for the 3-round fight, is made to make you look silly. It could be a very, very difficult ask if he doesn't mix things up a little bit.
Jack, just explain the mental burnout of fighting someone like a Michael Venom Page, who is fainting like mad. None of his reads and patterns are the same. His entries are all different. His exits are all different. You just don't know what puzzle's being presented to you.
He's a game planning nightmare. Imagine getting the call from your manager and they tell you you're fighting MVP. You think, who on God's green earth am I meant to get in to mimic this guy? I think he's very much one of those guys that until you're out there in front of him, you don't really know how you're going to deal with it. Gary did a great job of sort of navigating the space and closing the distance. And I think if Jared wants to win this over 3 rounds, that's what he's got to do. He's got to take a page out of Ian's book. He's got to close him down. He's got to get hold of him. And he's got to make it scrappy. If you want a clean fight with MVP, it's not going to go your way. You've got to get in there, rough him up a little bit, and use that size. MVP, he's fighting between 2 weight classes, but ultimately, he is a natural 170-pounder. The speed coming up a weight is going to be great for him, but also he does lose that size factor. So if Jared can get hold of him, having been a former light heavyweight and heavyweight, and just tire him a little bit, we can slow him down and maybe get a couple of reads on that striking, then perhaps, we're looking at a totally different fight.
Yeah. Kicking off the main card at UFC 319, we've got a couple of small guys. One that we've not seen for a long period of time, since December of 2023, in Tim Elliott. He's back, and he is taking on Kai Asakura. Of recent times, and listen, Nick's going to wax lyrical about Pantoja in a minute, so I apologise for this, Mr. Shore. But it felt like the division was not getting stale, but it was going down the same realm that we had with DJ when Demetrius was just dominating everybody. But there's been a couple of contenders just stick their head above the parapet, the likes of the Joshua Vans. Obviously, last week we had Tara come through, looking really, really good. So it's starting to get exciting once again. And there's an opportunity here. I know that Kai Asakura has been in with Pantoja. He came in, he lost that fight. But there's an opportunity for him here to really make a little bit of grounding in the UFC, to prove that he is what everybody thought he was when he came out of the organisation in Asia.
Yeah, I very much think, that Asakura is the real deal. Kind of got the short end of the stick coming in and making his debut against Pantoja. Obviously, got them UFC jitters, and then you factor in he's fighting one of the best fighters on the planet. I can imagine that everything just felt even worse than what it should have been for him. But I'm very high on the guy. He's very big for the weight class. 13 of his 21 wins by KO. And although he's only had one fight in the UFC, he has got good wins over good level guys. You know, Juan Archuleta, Yaraguchi, Manuel Cap. He's beat some real high level guys out in this other promotion. It's just a case that we haven't necessarily seen it. But you can't ever count out Tim Elliott. You know, them scrappy veterans, they have a bad habit of spoiling the show and taking the momentum away from the young guys too.
The only question over Tim, I suppose, coming into this, Nick, is activity. We haven't seen him for a long time.
Yeah, we haven't seen him for 18 months now, but the last time we did see him, he had a wonderful bonus performance. I think he won by submission in his last fight out, and that was a bounce-back victory after losing to Mo Mokhiev as well. We'd seen him just before that. Listen, Tim's been around forever. You know, he's been in the UFC coming up to 15 years. I remember a lifetime ago when he knocked out Jens Pulver, who was obviously UFC champion or went on to be UFC champion. So Tim's mixed with the best for best part of 15 years. And he is probably at the back end of his career now. But that doesn't mean that he's done, you know. There was 18 months off. He probably got to rest his bones, rest a few old injuries, and come back stronger. And he'll ask serious questions about Asakura. I'm like Jack, I'm a big fan of Asakura. I think outside of the UFC, he looked like a bit of a phenom. But he did spend 6-7 years up at bantamweight before he got the UFC call. So when he came into the UFC to fight Pantoja, it was first time making flyweight in 7 years. And I think that's why the UFC have gone, you know what, okay, probably wasn't the best idea. Let's throw you in with Tim Elliott, who is an absolute vet of this flyweight division. Let's see if you can get a win over an established UFC flyweight like Elliott. And then we look to rebuild you, because we know there's a fight. We know there's a super fight out there. It's all Japan. It's in Tokyo. It's New Year's Eve. And it's this guy, Asakura, taking on Tatsuro Taira. We all want to see it.
Look at him. He's currently on holiday, dreaming of another holiday out to Japan. To be fair, though, I mean, that would be incredible, wasn't it? Not just for the UFC, Jack, but also for Japanese MMA to have two lads there in a main event out in Japan. Doesn't necessarily have to be New Year's Eve. Don't know if I can get the time off. But you get the gist. I mean, it would be sensational, wouldn't it, Jack?
Listen, Jack knows. Pride used to always do a big event on New Year's Eve. Saitama Super Arena. This is made for it.
You know, I can absolutely get behind it. Even the UFC used to do the New Year's Eve shows. So they haven't done one for a few years. As Nick said, let's bring it back. Let's put it in the Super Arena and let's let the guys clash. And maybe, if we're lucky, TNT will fly us three out to do a bit of work on it. Would be nice. I'd have to run it by the missus though, check that I'm allowed to go that time of year.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking as well, mate. But it would be fantastic. It is. Listen, we can all see that narrative, but he's got to perform against Tim Elliott, and as Jack said a moment or two ago, that is not an easy task. So we'll find out on Saturday night whether he's up to it. Boys, I always ask for a pre-lim pick to get people excited about the card at the weekend. Jack, I'll come to you first. Which one is jumping off those prelims for you, mate?
For me, it's Drakkar Klose versus Edson Barboza. Our first time seeing Barboza back up at lightweight, which I think is a better weight class for him. You know, all his big highlight reel KOs have come up there, despite having good success at featherweight. But, you know, he's getting on in terms of age in his career. I think it's a great move for him to go up. And a guy in Klose who's never in a boring fight. You know, you think back to the Dariush fight, despite it being a loss, it was an absolute barn burner. So for me, I expect the guys to just meet in the middle and see a good old striking match. And I'm very excited to see if Barboza can get back to the Barboza of old, you know, the devastating leg kicks, the spin kicks, and just see if that lack of an intense weight cut will have a positive effect on him.
Yeah. Nick, what are you going for, mate?
I'm going with Chase Hooper versus Alexander Hernandez. Hernandez, Alex the Great, they call him, always brings it. Yes, I think his UFC record's like 8-7. But he's never, ever in a dull fight. Makes you work for everything. He's the epitome of what the UFC roster is about. Yeah, maybe he won't go on and fight for the title, but this guy always delivers, win, lose, or draw. And on the other side of the octagon, you got Chase Hooper, or also known as Screech from Saved by the Bell, that came into the UFC as this BJJ young prodigy from California, about 8 stone soaking wet, and he's literally grew up in front of our eyes. He's married now, he's got a baby, he's putting good wins together, he's on a 5-fight win streak, which includes Jim Miller and Clay Guida, a sub over Clay Guida as well. He's really starting to blossom now as an athlete. I think this is a fight that's a matchup made in heaven, if you like.
I'd like to point out that there's only Nick Peet that calls him Screech from Saved by the Bell. That's not his official moniker. Bruce Buffer will not be introducing him as Screech. But maybe he should. That's good.
Exactly.
There you go. Jack, thank you so much for your time, mate, coming to join us. Lovely bit of expertise sprinkled in on the show. Good luck with everything that's going on in the gym, my man, and we're looking forward to seeing you cage-side soon.
Thank you, guys. Really do appreciate it. Always a blast, and as you two said, can't wait for this card on the weekend.
Tell Oban I'll send his shirt back in the post.
You say you'll send your tan back to you as well.
Yeah. There you go. We're all set for UFC 319 this Saturday night. Lerone Murphy gets the late call up to defend his position in the featherweight rankings when he faces UFC debutant Aaron Pico. And the middleweight championship is on the line as reigning champion Dricus Du Plessis takes on Boa's Khamzat Chimaev. It all goes down live Saturday night on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus. The prelims kick off at 1 a.m. with the main card from 3. Do not miss it.